Chapter 8 to 14. Ei-chan, have you packed all your stuff? Napkin, my clothes, hide by bearskin, emergency food, seals, everything looks fine. It is already the third time you asking. I shook my head over her shenanigans. It was finally time for me to leave. Although she assured me that we could meet each other often, I knew that that's only gonna happen one time when King Arthur will get Excalibur from her. I wish you could have wielded Excalibur, but I guess fate wants something else. Vivian as usual tried one last attempt to convince me to wield Excalibur, but I literally didn't need that sword for two reasons. One is obvious that I don't want to use a weapon that is supposed to be wielded by King Arthur, and the other is that I don't want to stop aging. I still want to graduate from my midget size as fast as I can. I was 14 years old but still looked like 10 years old kid. And remember the rules? Don't eat bad food, not to fool around with women, always be true to me, and train hard. Anything else, mother? Nope, I am proud of my son. She then gave me a warm hug before looking at Merlin with cold eyes. I will try to look after him to ensure that he doesn't follow the wrong path. Haha. Merlin was a little nervous since when it comes to her children she becomes a little overprotective. Humph, my Ei-chan is strong and can take care of himself. You just have to teach him your way of magecraft. Yeah, she didn't trust Merlin much. Goodbye, mother. Goodbye, son. After the final farewell, we parted with each other and came back to the surface. It is good to have a family. Yeah. You should also start a family, Merlin-sama. Haha. I am not made for looking after a family. He laughed then added, and call me Merlin only. I am not fond of calling with honorifics. Because you sound old and can't chase after women? I raised my brow. How did you, I mean who told you this kind of thing? Way past that. I wonder if he is generally stupid or only acts this way. Now that I think about it, he looks similar to Merlin of FGO. I didn't focus much but he looks exactly like that character. Does it mean that I am in that kind of reality? I might have been in one. I only watched animated series so I don't know the details. The only thing I remember was that he came from the Garden of Avalon, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Is there something on my face? He asked and I realized that I had been staring at him. You have a charming face, Merlin. No wonder women easily fall for you. Haha, thanks for the praise, Einar, but charming face comes with cons, you know? Sometimes they become a little problematic. Yar, being handsome is really troublesome. What a narcissist. But one should control their emotions and relationships. And break the heart of maiden? I blink several times before getting annoyed. Ha! Don't you know how to hold back? Really? And how exactly? Seriously? You will get in big trouble one day because of women, Merlin. I smirked since there was indeed some kind of legend about him. How rude. I am always being careful so thank you. And I am your teacher from now on so pay me respect, you know? He said and puffed his cheeks. Hi. We were in the middle of our walk when a giant demonic boar came in front of us. I immediately transformed my book into a spear and ready for the combat. I was not used to fighting head-on but I was confident in my enchanting magic. Ho! So you have your own magic weapon, and fancy one on that. Merlin on the other hand paid no attention to the boar and happily examining my spear like a kid watching a toy. Hey, we have got an emergency on our hand. Where? He gave a silly smile before tapping his cane on the ground. I didn't know what happened but the boar ran in another direction like we were not even present. Illusion? I knew that Merlin is a kind of mage of hit and run but it was a different kind of magic. Correct, it is my specialty. I am not used to fighting head-on so prepared these kinds of tricks. He smiled and we resumed our walk. We talked on the way and before I knew we became friends of some sort. I realized that he was the kind of man who has the perfect personality of happy to go the man and love humans. He talked about various knights and kings of his age and their achievements and feats. However, there was one thing that bothered me about him on his view of humans. Perhaps because he was half incubus who is not human and I being pure human once, I let that matter be solved in the future. We then came before a place protected with the bounded field so that only we could enter. What is this? I asked pointing at the big magic circle. You will understand. We walked to the circle and remained still until Merlin tapped his cane lightly on the middle of the circle. The scenery in front of us changed with different forest and greenery. Teleportation? 10 out of 10 for guessing the correct answer, Einar. Pretty cool, right? Yeah. It was amazing to think that a person could travel a distance this easily. Just imagine the cost we could save from long travel. Haha, my own home is even better. He pointed at the hose under the cherry blossom tree and further surrounded by a garden of flowers. Beautiful. It was like a home in heaven. Hold on, that tree doesn't seem to be native of Britain. I asked since it was called Sakura tree, which was the national tree of Japan in my previous life. I wonder how that country looks like since Heian period is yet to come. As an otaku, I knew a little history about Japan and wondered if Merlin went there at some point. So you having foresight about the future was correct? Indeed, this tree is not native to Britain. I picked the essence of this tree from the far eastern continent when I was trying to search for beautiful flowers and ended up transporting there. Okay, there is something wrong with this guy's head. Who the hell could travel all the way to the other side of the planet for flowers? Don't look at me with mean eyes. I have hobbies. He retorted childishly before we entered his house. It was a normal-looking house, just like Vivian's, but more sophisticated. Now that we are here, Einar, can you explain to me your view on Arthurian legend? He asked with curiosity in his eyes. I sighed and saw that coming. So Arthur pulls Excalibur from slab and becomes king and then defeats evil dragon? That's about it. There are verities, but that's how the story goes. I said, eating dried fishes and watching Merlin drooling. He was curious about Arthurian legend in my stories, so I end up telling a general story instead of a detailed one. I didn't tell him details since he only wanted to hear a general view. Something's better left unsaid. That's what he said. He has a good sense of sensibility for information. It means it is going according to plan. He muttered. What was that? Just talking to myself. How about we start your training? You could give me that jar, for safekeep. He asked me for the jar of dried fish. Nah, it's fine. I shook my hand and stored the jar in my book storage. He seemed a little disappointed, but I won't be going to fall for his pretty face. But before anything, Einar, I have to say something very important. He became serious and placed his staff on the table. Einar, you are aware of the premise of clairvoyance, no? Yes. Mother told me that you have done many prophecies. Vivian told me many things about him, but apart from his magic or magecraft in his language, he was better known for his future foresight. Some appeared to be true while some happened alternatively. He was even said to be shaping the realities according to his prophecies, but of course, those were only myths, according to some people. What if the foresight that I told you would lead to your demise? I will change it. That's the reason I want to become a strong mage. It was no hidden matter as I was positive to learn magecraft since in order to survive in this world, you have to be skilled in magecraft since not everything can be solved by mere physical strength. What if that fate was faced by someone you admire? I would save them. Even if it cost you heavily? At that point, I was a little reluctant to answer. Apart from enchantment training, I also learn about knights and their honor, their etiquettes, and their pride, but the question is, will I be able to stand with the same honor and pride in face of death? I was an ordinary person who lived a life before, and now that I have been given chance, should I stand with the same honor and pride in face of death and sacrifice my life for what, this land? The answer was yes, I would save those who I cherish the most. I can't save everyone but those I love. This is the true pride of a warrior. Yeah, it sounds super cringe, but that's my ultimate wish. Die? Then die like a warrior so that the next generation remembers you. I will tell you something and foremost to let you decide for now since it's not too late. Fate itself will be your enemy, Einar Sirius. I suggest for you to run now then face the harsh reality. Thanks, but I am confident in my abilities. Challenges are just part of life, I will face them then run like a coward. He smiled and then patted my head. Then I will help you here. Let's see how you fight against fate itself. I nodded with little fear and greater pride and confidence in my heart. And so my training started with him. About magic training, I have to say, it was the toughest training even more than the training of a knight. It was all about complex formulas and magic circles that you have to cast. Magecraft or thaumaturgy is the artificial reenactment of mystery, which is ordinarily possible only by inhuman beings. In other words, it is the ability to bring about what is possible through physical laws, science, with supernatural means. Although the process is considered a miracle, the result is not. Merlin said that magecraft in this era was at the peak where mages were less and magical energy from the root was more. Besides, we both have enough mana to execute spells efficiently, so we don't need to pull magic from root. He also warned me about root since it is the force of magic and many mages always want to reach root, but neither I nor Merlin desired so. We only want to achieve our goals through magecraft. Then comes equivalent exchange. Everything has a price and it is up to you how you pay it. Then comes spell casting, the basic foremost part of magecraft. However, Merlin hardly cast spells since he used to bit his tongue, so just like my book of Chastiefol, he stored all his spells in his staff so that he only has to gather mana and click on the button, and boom, magic has been cast. Next, come elements, fire, water, earth, wind, and void, ether, or water, fire, earth, wood, and metal. The void is the attribute that is special of its kind like my holy attribute. I also have an affinity for every basic element, with holy being my strongest. Next comes sorcery trait, which is one of the components that determine magecraft's effectiveness. Attributes add meaning to elemental magecraft and expand its versatility. There are multiple types, such as reinforcement, projection, and conversion. In simple words, it's your specialty and the way of your sorcery. I didn't develop one, but enchantment could be called my main attribute since it is the single magic that I was master at. Other than above, he also taught me some alchemy that is related to magecraft, construction items basically. Overall, I learned many kinds of magecraft from him and I have to say he was a great teacher. When teaching, he was strict and precise, as he cared if the student actually learning his lessons. He doesn't care if the student even wants to be taught, he simply has to do his job. About him, he was an earnest and easy-to-go guy and a cheap mage. He could make any kind of spell for any use. I wondered if there is something he can't do. Although he was not a combat type unlike me, he had tons of tricks in his sleeves. And just like Vivian told me, he feasts upon human dreams. Since I also sleep like normal human nature, he once tried to infiltrate my mind, but he paid a big price by watching Boku no and Dragon Ball Evolution. I also managed to increase my height by 1 centimeter, that was my biggest feat. Not to mention, I become proficient at making D-rank noble phantasm, but more practice was required and so another year passed. Stats. Name Einar Sirius. Race, human/fae. Age, 15. Physique. Strength, E++. Mana, A+++. Endurance, D. Agility, D+++. Luck, EX. Hey village chief, is that kid really a mage? A knight in leather armor asked the man beside him, looking at a kid of 11 years old in white hood casting spells on his levitating spear. He was wearing a white robe of exquisite fabric and a white hood covering his skin like Merlin. Yes, sir, and please refrain from calling him kid? Chief replied nervously. Huh. What could a brat like that do against a knight? The knight replied mockingly. Slip. The boy in front of them said, pointing his hand towards the said knight. The knight didn't know what happened, but it was too late as a magic circle appeared under him and he fell on the ground with both legs in the air. Arg! Knight grunted when he slipped on solid ground with his armor and lance. Surrounding soldiers snickered but didn't dare to laugh at the knight. Sir, please control yourself not to disrespect that mage. He is Merlin's disciple. The village chief whispered to the knight, who widened his eyes and stared at the back of the little mage. Einar's POV. I shook my head and controlled my emotions so as not to burn Knight alive. My height had become my triggering point, so I easily got carried away. Enchantment, blaze, enchantment, wind, void, gravitational spin, seal, element, final lock. Pointing my spear at the wooden gate in front of me, I was casting some buffs on it. First I cast a fire spell to give it firepower, then cast a wind spell to make it hotter, and then finally void magic to make it spin for increasing its power even more. I turned towards the villagers wearing leader armors and the knight wearing plate armor, carrying a lance. People of the village who comes to save their loved ones and take revenge, please ready for the combat. I will cast a buff spell on you so that you will heal immediately while becoming strong. I said to all of them and cast some buffs to raise their attacks and defense with a minor healing spell. Mass buff is still a problem for me since it drains much mana than it required. Furthermore, if the people are moving then it was even harder, but I still manage. Oh. I can't wait to fight these bandits. I can feel a new strength in my body. Yeah, they have been a big pain in the ass for quite a long time. Thanks to Mage Sama's blessing. I started to hear some praises and nodded. Who doesn't like to be praised? But there was one idiot who made me lose my head. "Hey, what the hell is buff, kid?" he asked, but then realized that he called me kid again. Intentionally. "Call me kid one more time and I will fucking pull your testicles out of your mouth, you fucking tin can." They were all speechless as they weren't expecting swearing from me. I shook my head and then pointed in front of me like a gun. Bang. The spear started to spin more furiously before disappearing like a bullet and then destroying the wooden door into pieces. Boom asterisk. Ah. Bandits behind the door cried from the explosion. Charge. The knight in the front took the charge with his lance before leading them for the assault. He was young but a capable knight. I shook my head, holding the spear again, and then pour mana into my magic boots before jumping in the air. Step by step like climbing a hill, I came to the watchtower and swing my spear to kill the bandit. Arg! Trash, I mocked and didn't feel a thing, but instead I rather enjoyed it since they robbed many villages and killed innocents. For them, I have no mercy. Is that a mage? From the lookout, I saw a person holding a staff and firing spells at villagers. Knight was busy dealing with bandit leader, so only I could deal with this problem. I jumped again, covering more distance before landing in front of the mage. "Leave him to me," I called to villagers who were trying to take down the mage. He was wearing a black robe, looking like a typical bandit sorcerer of a game, but his build was big, standing 6 foot tall. "Ho ho ho. Look like Mr. Mage come here specifically for poor me." He laughed creepily. "Dude, don't waste words as a minor character." I yawned and wanted to go back to take some rest. "What did you say?" "Go and die, midget." He roared and then fired some flame spells from his staff. Boom asterisk. A big attack exploded at my face and smoke covered me. Bandit smirked, but his expression turned ugly in the next moment. "So you have chosen death, huh?" I said with cold eyes only for surrounding villagers to cover their eyes. "Hey key mage, do you need some help?" The knight came wanted to help the child mage since mages are not meant for combat, only to see defeated bandit mage and white mage sitting on top of him. Although all the bones of the bandit were broken, he was somehow alive. The mage got up and walked slowly towards the knight. Knight became a little nervous since the little looked dangerous, but as a knight he was calm. The mage stopped in front of the knight and extended his hand. "Payment." "Oh right," Knight said and paid some gold coins to the mage, who took the bag of money and jumped in the air before disappearing in from their sight. Who exactly was that? The knight was confused since his level of magic was similar to Merlin yet different. "He is called Little Monster at this vicinity." The village chief answered the knight's unintentional question and then added, "He is a little possessive of his height, so be careful on stepping on his sore point, Sir K. POV. "Oh, I think we will be returning home soon, Ito," I said to my horse and caressed his hair. I should have roamed the village a little more, but it looks Brother K has returned. It is such a disappointment since I can't engage in the fight before I could be called rightful king. Why am I living as a boy and to become a king? I don't know, neither do I have a wish. Soon the gate opens and Brother K entered before falling on the pile of grass. "How was your fight, Brother K?" I asked while taking off his armor. "It was okay. Thanks to the little mage, it was rather easy." "Mage?" "Yeah, they say that he is Merlin's disciple." "Do you know anything about it, Arthur?" Brother asked me with my male name. "No. Merlin never mentioned, neither do I asked. Merlin teaches me in my dreams where I only focus on learning without asking the purpose. Could he possibly be Dash? Never, that brat has such a chaotic personality. I don't think he is Merlin's child given his foul mouth. Sigh asterisk, I hope to never meet him again. Brother K said, then gets up to take out his horse. I followed him wondering what kind of person Merlin's disciple will be who made Brother K stiff. With that thought, I also take out my horse Ito to went home. Another simple day. Einar, POV. Somewhere in a tavern, a pair of the couple were sitting and enjoying the tea. I am so delighted that Merlin spared some time to lowly me. A woman said, sitting opposite the man with both of her hands supporting her chin. Hee, it was natural for me to make quality time for a beautiful woman like you, Lady Mila. Merlin, the half-incubus, and Magus said and sipped the tea when. How could you do this to me? They heard someone and saw a pretty girl with blonde hair and face with tears in her eyes. Foot asterisk. Merlin spat the tea on Mila's face when he saw the blonde hair girl. I am your child's mother. the blonde-haired girl said, holding her stomach and slowly caressing it. All of them began cursing the Magus in whispers. Wait, I can explain. But before Magus of Flower could explain this to the lady he just spit tea on her face, the blonde-haired girl focused all her strength in one hand and slapped Merlin with enough force breaking his teeth. Ugh. Merlin was jolted with the power of slap, then cast healing spell on his cheek. He then saw the face of Mila, who was also furious, throwing the tea she was drinking on Merlin's face before running out of the tavern. Before the situation could get worse and his reputation started licking dirt, he disappeared from the tavern with the blonde-haired girl. What is wrong with you? I thought that you would take time alone. Merlin said and sighed. I finally got the chance to ask favors from the daughter of Count, but you made a big mess. Sheesh. My jaw is hurting. I ignored him and changed back to my Shota form. A little shape-shifting magic I learned from him. I'd also least expected to see your annoying face ever again, but the situation warrants your help. I said with a toned face. He also became serious and asked, what happened? I sighed and spoke while playing with my finger embarrassingly, I want to train as a knight. Huh. Since when did you want to train like a knight? I thought we are mages, buddy. Why did you decide to leave me? He said, hugging me over dramatically with fake tears. Oh, come on. We both knew how much you want me to move out so that you could spend your time fooling around. After saying this, I pushed him away. It's not like that. Anyway, I want to get a teacher for developing my spear skills. I said, looking at my nails since. Just say that you want to put some muscles and become tall like knights. He said with a deadpan expression. It's not okay, I want to put some muscles, it's true. So what? Tell me, whose balls I have to fondle to get such training? You could ask Dash. I want to train under the same knight as future King Arthur, and don't you freaking deny. I will be his court mage in the future, so I got to make some bonds with him. I said, grabbing his collars. I knew that he was the teacher of future King Arthur, but he never let me meet the legendary king by saying that he was not ready. One reason was that I want to live with actual humans. Both Vivian and Merlin weren't humans, so they sometimes don't understand me. Although Merlin is half human, his meaning of sympathizing with them is abnormal. I was really fed up living with him. I would rather live with a dude who will become legendary king than this half incubus. Sigh asterisk, so it comes to this. Merlin sighed and then searched his robe before taking out an envelope. There is a letter of recommendation for you. Deliver this to Knight Sir Ector. He will take you in, but don't come to complain me if you couldn't survive harsh training. Merlin gave me the letter with the chit explaining the address of said knight's house and map of the town. He smiled and rubbed my head before he coughed and spoke. There is something that you should know. King Arthur is a special case. Anyway, since he got responsibilities to fill, so don't create trouble, that's it. It's fine, probably. He muttered, the last part being confused. I didn't know why he was so concerned with Arthur. It's not like I will be going to confess to a dude. Anyway, I waved my hand, walked away, leaving him muttering on his own. Thanks, Merlin. I smiled and spoke softly. I heard that. Merlin also waved his hand before going in the opposite direction. I am going home. Where the hell do you think you are going? I ran towards him and kicked his ass. He rolled several times before landing with his ass up. Seriously, this guy. After walking for 6 days on foot, I finally reached the designated location. Gosh, I wished I have learned riding a horse. Both Merlin and Vivian forgot to teach me how to ride one. I also tried once on my own, let's talk about that later. I finally came to the door of the knight named Ector. I was very excited to meet future legendary King Arthur as well as the first knight of the Round Table, Sir Kay. I have read some legends about their feats, so of course, I was looking forward. I knocked on the door a few times before waiting for someone to open. Soon a person opened the door, making it one of the most memorable moments of my life. My fateful meeting with her. She was a girl wearing a normal male civilian dress, with blonde hair and a ponytail and emerald green eyes. Although many would have mistaken her for a feminine boy, I could say that she was a girl from her sweet and charming smell. Batum asterisk. I was in a daze looking at her. For a while, my heartbeat started to become faster. Oh no. Who are you, mister? She asked me, but I could only look at her in a daze. I didn't answer, but I simply removed my hood. She seemed a little shocked looking at my charming face, but it was usual for me. For me, I can't just shove my eyes off from her beautiful face. I also started to hear romantic music in the background while flowers fluttering in the air. Batum asterisk batum asterisk. What is this feeling? I asked myself. Is that what people call love at first sight? I asked this several times, but the answer was before me. Oh no. Mister? She was waving her hand in my sight, but I was just standing there staring at her. Who is he? Oh my, what a cute child. Hey. He is the same brat. Several people came behind her while making their comments. The girl in front of me started to become a little embarrassed, and before she could turn to back off, I held her hand. Huh. She, along with people behind him, was confused, but I paid them no heed as I sit on one knee and confessed. I love you, the most beautiful girl. Please marry me. They were speechless for a moment before bursting out in surprise. Ha. Four individuals can be seen seated at a table while a woman was preparing tea for everyone. One had dark brown hair who was reading the letter little mage gave him. The second was a person with blonde hair and a fair face with handsome features frowning while looking at the little mage. The third was the boyish girl sitting with slightly rosy cheeks because of the constant stare from the little mage. The fourth was naturally me looking at the girl like I was in a different world. I can't believe that Merlin's disciple is an adorable brat with a foul mouth. The blonde hair boy said appeared to be in his 20s. And I can't believe you are Arthur Pendragon, son of Uther Pendragon that Merlin so boasts about. Somehow I even lost motivation to serve you. I replied with a look of disappointment, earning some chuckles from the family except that man who only smirked. But of course, if my first love is with me, then I am even willing to serve such an unsightly person, I said looking at blonde hair girl who looked away. P, please behave yourself, we have just only me. B, besides, there is an age difference. She said with a stutter, but I could see that she didn't deny my proposal. Others were also a little baffled seeing her expression, like realizing her true gender. Of course we could know each other in the future, my beloved. And as for age, please don't concern yourself with my height, I am 15 years old, young man. It's because of my unique bloodline that I am short. I smiled and didn't even try to ask about her name or anything, just looking at her simple yet adorable face was enough for me. Fufu, aren't you an energetic one? Here is your tea. The lady of the house came and placed teacups on the table. Thank you, ma'am. I gave her my brightest smile that petrified two ladies in the house. Even two men were in a daze looking at me. Oh my. She put her hand on the cheek and blushed. Mom, don't fall for his pretty face. He is rotten from inside. The blonde hair boy said. Mom? I was confused since as far as I know, Arthur's mother was a noble lady and not the wife of Hector. So it seems you are really Merlin's disciple and you come here to train as a knight and learn spearmanship? Hector asked. It is indeed correct, Sir Hector. Before Merlin, I was taught magic by Lady of the Lake and then by Merlin. Although I am a magus by nature, I always dreamed to stand by Arthur's side. That's why I want to train as a knight to stand beside Arthur, and since my main weapon is a spear, I want to learn spearmanship from a renowned warrior in your house. I explained, then turned towards the blonde hair boy. But I somehow not feeling to become a knight after seeing Arthur as a scrawny brat, I didn't feel the motivation to move further. At that statement, they were a little surprised, but I didn't know why the said person was smirking all the time even after being mocked. I then looked at the girl, who also paid attention to me. But of course, if you are willing to give me her hand for marriage, I am willing to even cross the sea. Without waiting for her reaction, I looked at Hector and continued. For your information, I have money, education of a noble, I could buy or even create a house, I can cook most delicious food, I am good at poetry and storytelling, and finally it won't be long before your embrace will be filled with lots of cute grandchildren. I said proudly, and then held the hand of the girl who blitzed all of a sudden. All in all, I will make her the happiest girl alive and never betray her. They were all stunned except the boy who I was thinking of as Arthur this whole time. The lady of the house was looking at me like a proud son-in-law, whereas Sir Hector shook his hand if saying it was not possible. Fake Arthur was holding his stomach, could burst into laughter at any moment, and as for the girl in front of me, she was still in a daze, and would be saying, it is my first time, someone said these kind words to me, like shoujo anime girls. Oh, such a sweet boy. I can't face his disappointed face. The lady of the house said and went to her room, leaving boys, including the tomboyish girl, to reveal the shocking truth. Well, Einar boy, I have to disappoint you for the marriage part and many other things, Hector said. I was getting agitated from their looks and asked, tell me if I have done something wrong. If there is a problem with her health, I am also an alchemist and healer, so it will be no problem. I wanted her to be my side at any cost. Let's not drag this matter further and properly introduce myself. As you know, I am Hector, a former knight. He pointed at the boy who I was mistaking as Arthur. My son Kay, he is not Arthur that you are expecting, and he, if you agree, will be your trainer since he uses a lance. Yo! Arthur, now Kay greeted with a smirk. And finally, Hector pointed at the girl. Her name is Artoria Pendragon, or Arthur that you mentioned. Hello. Artoria also greeted me like feeling guilty. My reaction? I was speechless. Ha! I stood from my chair and slammed on the table. Kay burst into laughter but stopped when Hector coldly glared at him. But Arthur is supposed to be a male. Wait, that freaking incubus didn't mention the gender of Arthur, did he? I will deal with him later, but point is, how the heck a girl be Arthur? I then looked at Artoria and apologized. I am sorry if I am offending you, my love. I have to explain that penis doesn't work that way. No, it's fine. She replied with a smile that pierced my heart like an arrow. Yeah, that is the real deal. If you want to train and live here as my apprentice, then treat her like a brother or friend of a sort. Hector shrugged his shoulders. And treat me like your master, Kay said with a smile. Fuck you. I immediately cursed him and sighed. I was very disappointed to the point that for a moment my eyes lost the color that didn't go unnoticed by them. Faye's eyes went colorless when they are disappointed or sad, which affects the surrounding atmosphere, even the weather. The same goes for me, as they could see the disappointment through my colorless eyes. Artoria, my first love, who is the gender-bent King Arthur of the future, also looked down feeling kind of guilty. I felt a little bad since in this whole mess none of this was her fault, so I coughed and smiled to calm myself and cheer the mood. Sir Hector, I understand your concern. I will do as you say. I said to Hector and then turned to look at Artoria. I am kind of stubborn kid, so my pledge will not never be worn out. I am sorry, it is something I can't compromise as I am born with it, Artoria Pendragon. Eto. She was confused about what to say to me. Haha, relax. I will respect your wish to be treated as a boy, but let's start from being friends. I smiled. As you say, Einar. She also smiled. Oh, I have something for you, I said, then opened my book and take out a jar of dried fish. This is for you, enjoy. I gave that jar to Artoria, who received it despite being reluctant with stars in her eyes. Hector and Kay were also curious since the scent of fish was strong and anybody could tell they were delicious. If you are done, then come outside and show me your combat skills, Hector said, and get from his seat, followed by his son Kay. I also followed them without waiting for Artoria's reaction to trying my dish. Artoria's POV. Never in my life had I expected someone to treat me like a girl who was always treated like a boy by everyone, even from me. When he confessed to me, I was confused, but after hearing his belief in me, I was embarrassed since I don't know what kind of reaction I should give. A girl being embarrassed or a boy being embarrassed, but seeing him made me feel happy. The feeling was foreign but warming, to say the least. I put the dried fish in my mouth and immediately felt delighted. So delicious. It was the most delicious dish I have ever tasted in my 15 years of life. I didn't realize, but meeting a mage named Einar Sirius was also the happiest moment of my life. I didn't also know that he will change me and my view someday, but for the moment I followed them while eating dried fishes. Hector and I came to the open field, followed by Kay and Artoria, who seemed to like my cooked dish as she was constantly chewing fishes. I left my book of Chastiefol in Kay's hands since I wanted to convey my full potential only as a warrior. Hector picked 2 wooden swords and gave me one. You do know how to fight with a sword, right? I nodded since both Vivian and Merlin taught me swordsmanship to an extent. Yeah. Then come and charge at me with full might. He said and took a stance. Ha! I screamed and charged at my full strength, but he, with a boring look, simply blocked my sword like I was holding a stick. Sigh *, don't stop and continue. He looked a little disappointed since my strength was not much. I nodded and then charged at him using all the tricks and techniques I learned from Vivian and Merlin, but he blocked my all strikes using a single hand and didn't move from his position even once. No matter what I tried, I couldn't even pass his sword, let alone making a strike, and not to mention he was just stood there testing my skills and only blocking them. No wonder, he was known as the top knight of the previous king. Let us stop this. After not getting any desirable results, he suggested stopping. It is evident that you are a pure mage and definitely not made for direct combat. Although your techniques of swords are good, power and precision are very low. I looked down since it was indeed the case. My physical prowess sucks, and I knew it. As a mage, I had dedicated a greater portion of my life to learning magecraft and then completing tasks given to me by Merlin, so I had very little time to polish my swords play or spears play. Knights usually begin their training from the younger age of 10, but how much time I spent polishing my skills? Barely 2 years. I know, that's why I want to learn. I looked down. Aw, don't be disappointed, kid, it was a given. Considering you are mage and young on that, you are very good at combat. He tried to comfort me since my sad face was unbearable to everyone. Hector, not getting any result, sighed and changed the topic. Now, how about I test your spearmanship, your signature combat type? Got it. I nodded and raised my hand towards Kay, who was holding my book. The book suddenly rose from Kay's grip and flew directly on my hand. They were shocked to see the real magic, but their surprise went next level when a spear came out from my book. Yes, previously my book changes into a spear by I invested some points to separate spear from the book. From the book, it is easier for me to cast a spell directly without chanting while also using spear separately. The spear was floating in the air as I could control it with the levitation ability. Ho ho ho. That's something new. You have your own magic weapon? He looked excited, and from the aura of my spear, he knew that wooden swords can't handle it, so he took out a metal sword from the stand. Indeed, Sir Hector. Its name is Chastiefol, a weapon made from Tree of Life. I decided to tell the name of my weapon. I didn't want to disrespect his trust by hiding such minor details. Really now? You have some relations to fairies? He asked. I will tell you my origin some other time. How about we start the real fight? I said, holding a spear in my hands and taking a stance to strike. My control over levitation was not perfect, so I didn't want to rely on it while leaving my body defenseless. Whoa! Arthur, did you see that? He took that spear out from that book. It was my second time seeing his spear, but I am already envious. Kay said, looking at Artoria, who was also looking at fight while eating dried fishes. Yes. He is a mage, so the magic of this caliber is a given. Artoria replied while munching fishes and looking at Einar and his spear. Can I have some? Kay asked, but Artoria seemed to not hear it or ignore him and continued to watch the fight. Kay sighed and also decided to watch the fight, hoping for his dad to make Einar lick some dirt. I charged at Hector and strike my spear only for him to block it with a sword. Now that's what I am talking about. He said excitedly and pushed me away. He then delivered a vertical strike, which I blocked with the spear, but the power behind it was immense, making me flipping back. Brat, your power lacks. That is true, but not speed. I charged again, but he blocked and pushed me back. We repeat the same techniques, but then... Enough. He stroked again, knocking my spear, and kicked me on the abdomen, making me roll on the ground. Cough asterisk, cough asterisk. I coughed few times and then saw Hector pointing his sword at me. You lose. Oh really? Feeling confused, he saw my hand and then looked back to see a spear on his neck levitating in the air. Haha, then it's my loss. Hee, no need to be kind, Sir Hector. I would have been finished in seconds if not for you holding back. I said, shaking off my clothes. Good analytical skills. Well, do what you want. In meantime, I will arrange a room for you. He said, then went inside the house. I also put a spear inside Chastiefol when I heard footsteps. That's some good spear skills. I am so envious of your magical spear. Kay said, looking at the book. Thanks. If you want, then I will prepare a magic weapon for you too. I may seem like a kid, but my magecraft in creating weapon is not lower than Merlin. Then I will be receiving some favors, Einar. And I will seek your training methods, Kay. We both smiled and immediately became friends. Don't worry, Einar, you will get better. I am sure of it. Artoria also decided to participate in the conversation. Thanks, Artoria. I also smiled and then saw her hopeful eyes. I chucked and patted her head. 140 centimeters against 154 centimeters, it was a little hard, but I managed to give my love the legendary anime head pat. Don't worry, I am good at cooking. I will make anything of your demand. I then went inside the house without waiting for her response. Artoria cutely put her hand on her head and tried to find the meaning of head pat while also following me instinctively. Why am I even here? Kay felt terrible and a little envious of his brother, who is a girl, who found a life partner before him. I was then introduced to my new room. There was a separate servant quarter where many apprentices used to live, but since I was a student of Merlin, the great mage, I was given the guest room. Not to mention that I will serve King Arthur, who was a girl, in the future. I then talked to Hector and Kay about knights and training regimes. Artoria also joined and talks about various skills, but of course, I refrained from flirting with her since I didn't want to sound clingy and respect their choice. I wanted to talk about this bizarre setting and discuss this matter about gender-bend King Arthur since many things were bugging me. When talking, Artoria seemed excited talking about the Way of Swords and Pride of Knights. Like many other people at that time, I was enchanted by her aura and thought that she will definitely be the ideal king that people of Britain talked about. How wrong I was. When I tried to ask her about herself, she didn't seem to like to talk about it, so I didn't ask. Hector also asked me to treat her like a brother and call her Arthur when in public, to which I agreed. I tried to read her expression if she was okay with this, but to my surprise, she didn't show any sign of disappointment, like it was only natural to be treated as a man. At that time, I was the man who has beliefs and logic of independence of my previous life. How could someone like me with the common sense of the 21st century could possibly understand someone from the 5th century, when that someone was going to become king? Sure, I had received the education of a noble, but nobility in practice and nobility in books are different. I didn't know if the person doing was because of his own choice or not. Ignorance. That's what I decided to do by avoiding this matter for the future. How wrong I was. Back to the same day, it was time for lunch. I was invited to sit and eat with the family. How long was it that I eat with a family? I didn't remember. Before the food, we prayed as thanks for granting food even in the warring period. The food was meat with soup and bread. Since I was new to the family, they decided to cook meat since it was rare at that time. Just like always, it didn't quite sit well for my tongue. Something wrong with the food? Hector asked, and the lady of the house, Marie, also looked at me curiously since she prepared the meal, as her expression was also usual for me. Anyone would get annoyed if you prepare a meal for a guest in hard time and he doesn't like it. Please don't misunderstand, but my tongue is sensitive to taste. I then took out 3 of 4 small glass jars. They contained sugar, pepper, salt, and chili powder since I like spicy food. I made them through magic since they were not a common commodity at an early ages. How I made them? It's simple. I made magic circles in my book so they filled the bottles of such commodities whenever they need to replenish. However, I need to have an understanding of the molecular level, and they also took a whole page in my book, 2 pages, each taking one side of a single page. My book is like a grimoire where I could record ready-to-use spells with space covering the level of spells. Even so, each page can contain 10 spells at most, so I was a little reluctant of having limited pages. And I have a trick to adjust the taste. I smirked and then added some ingredients, changing its taste completely. Good. I nodded, but then saw curious Artoria, who was sitting beside me due to me being a love stuck, who gulped a mouthful of saliva while looking at my dish. I ignored 3 other curious pairs of eyes. I smiled and then offered some from my spoon that I just used to her, who hesitated for a moment, but her mouth opened automatically and took the bite. Yes, the indirect kiss is a success. She jolted with delight, while others also gulped, seeing her expression. I shook my head and asked others to add those ingredients to my instructions. Their reactions were also more or less the same. I also decided to eat my meal, but when I looked, it disappeared. I looked at Artoria munching food, then her plate that left traces of dryness ages ago, then her again, and knew who the culprit was. She coughed and wanted to refill my plate again, but I simply smiled and stopped her. My appetite was already filled with her satisfied smile. Is that what people call love? I didn't know if this really happens in real story, but I was happy with just seeing her enjoying the meal. I asked Marie not to cook dinner since I would cook for the whole family, and she agreed immediately since she was curious about my culinary skills, but with condition that she will observe me during my work. After lunch, I came back to my room to adjust it. I am a little choosy, so I adjusted the furniture. Magic is really convenient in these old times. Dinner time. Is that glowing? Hector's eyes were shining with light coming from the table. It's so surreal. Kay was no different, looking at glowing treasure in front of him. This smell. Marie was enchanted with the scent. When do we start? Artoria asked, wiping her nth drool. I just chuckled seeing their reaction. I prepared many different dishes. There was roasted chicken, boiled golden rice, fried fishes, curry, salad, and 4 different kinds of sauces. Obviously, rank X cooking skill is no laughing matter, even Merlin eats my food when I try something different. From my way here, I picked all of this since I wanted to appease the family who would be taking care of me. Rice and fishes are not that common. Hell, rice was infamous for being food for the prisoner, but they didn't seem to be bothered by it. But Einar, isn't that too much? Marie asked, since it was indeed made for not 5 but 10 people. Don't worry, Aunt Marie. I know where it will go. I smirked at Artoria, who blushed and wiped her mouth again. I smiled, and after praying, I announced to commence the fight. They all except me and Marie began their raid on the table. I also calmly ate my meal and filled my appetite in few minutes, since my appetite was not much, but then I thought that knights do need to eat more, so I ate a little more. After 10 minutes of the continuous assault, I could see visible belies of the knight family. Sir Einar, you have earned my earnest respect. Please ask anything that required my assistance. Kay said respectfully. Kid, this is the most delicious food I have ever eaten. I guess I could live to just eat your food. Hector also praised me. Please guide me what you called the way of the kitchen. Marie requested. I became embarrassed, since I sometimes used chunny terms when I was getting raised. This is indeed tastiest food. If you don't mind, but please cook for us in the future if you have spare time. And thank you for the food. She bowed to me and thanked me. I was a little confused as to where the hell all food went, since she ate most of the food, as her bell was not swollen like the rest. Maybe it will go into her future breasts and thighs. I prayed to see her that form soon. Haha, anything for you, Artoria, since I will be serving you. Just order me and I will do so. I said, then picked a grain of rice from her cheek and ate it. She blushed lightly and nodded. We wrapped things up and went to our rooms. That's how my day ended, in a new family with me falling in love with genderbend King Arthur, Artoria Pendragon. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kayashin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.